National Park Service Arrowhead logo on black background. Mountain peaks, lightly dusted with snow. Puffy white clouds drift across a blue sky. Lisa McKeon, USGS physical scientist, Glacier National Park.
In the last 17 years, I can also tell a lot of the meadow areas that we go to, a lot of the ingrowth that's beginning to happen.
Pat Hagen, author, East Glacier, Montana.
Whether it's rain or snow or whatever, it's just, there's not a lot of middle ground. It's kind of extreme.
Bob Schuster, interpretive ranger, Glacier National Park.
Upper Grinnell Lake was part of the glacier. It was just a glacier at one time, but it's receded quite a bit, and now this big lake has formed as the glacier's melted away.
Dr. Dan Faegre, USGS research ecologist.
The glaciers are right on track for leaving us in a few decades.
Title: A Changing Landscape, Glaciers Warming Climate.
Why do we care that the glaciers are melting? Well, there's a couple different perspectives you could take. The hydrologic perspective is the most ecological example. Another reason that you might care is they're a landscape feature that's real meaningful to people.
Well, one of our objectives here is to understand how mountain ecosystems work and how they respond to climate change. And so there's many different components that we could be looking at, but one of the most obvious are the glaciers. And they're obvious because you can see them, you can measure them, you can photograph them, and people understand that ice melts when it gets warm. So there's not a big intuitive leap to explain that when it gets warmer, glaciers get smaller. And so even though they occupy a very tiny part of the landscape, they are disproportionately important, both to the way people perceive the park and how climate change is affecting it, but also to the aquatic organisms that rely on that meltwater. Glaciers store water sometimes for many decades, and so they act as a natural reservoir. They regulate the stream temperatures. Many of the alpine biota here have to have really cold water. They like water that's just barely above freezing. So as we start to lose some of these glaciers, we will undoubtedly lose some of these organisms too.
1914 black and white photo of Blackfoot Jackson Glacier.
The repeat photos, what they're showing is a lot of glacier recession. The glacier photos, maybe taken 100 years ago, show big full glaciers, and we go back 100 years later and it's just kind of these very small pieces that are left. You can see obvious recession, and what that's telling us is basically the climate trend. What's happened is warming. Ice melts when things warm up, and so the photos are very easy to interpret for people because everyone knows why ice melts, and so we can see the trend that's happened over the last 100 years.
Mountain goat in meadow.
Our role as USGS scientists here in the park, looking at glaciers and the effects of climate change, we're here to document what's happening and look at the effects of what our climate trends have been, and providing that information to park managers and land managers and to the public to interpret that information and do with it what they will.
High Mountain Lake.
Things that people can do are, first of all, you don't make matters worse. And so the policymakers have to make these decisions, but from a science standpoint, we know that if we can reduce emissions, we'll reduce the further changes from the climate. We don't really know how well some organisms adapt. Some certainly will, but others may not.
Hikers follow ranger.
I was just recently on a backpacking trip, and this father and son came out here specifically to see the glaciers. I mean, they're features that people want to see. Not everybody gets to see a glacier every day, and so it's a real special thing.
The beauty of the landscape doesn't change that much. That's still going to have impact on people. How tiny the glacier has become over the years is, if people see it for the first time, they just don't know.
Glacier National Park has already changed in many fundamental ways, and climate change is driving us towards a future that we're not entirely sure of. And so even though it's still a beautiful place to visit and will always be one of our cherished national parks, we have to consider that something has been lost. And in viewing these kinds of losses across the national park system, we need to take a strong lesson from this and look at how we can mitigate further climate change in the future.
Directed and filmed by Sarah Moody and Stephanie Oster. Produced and edited by Sarah Moody and Stephanie Oster. Music Eternal Hope by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons. Special thanks to Ray Eckness, Lisa McKean, Bob Schuster, Pat Hagen, and Dan Fagery. Thanks to Melissa Slottick and the Crown of the Continent Research Learning Center. Funding made possible by the Brainerd Conservation Fellowship and the Jerry O'Neill National Park Service Student Fellowship. For more information, please visit crownscience.org.